Good morning everyone. On behalf of MMBGIMS, I am Dr. Shilpa Shinde is covering today's topic Trends in Consumer Behavior in India. As we already observed that in Indian consumer point of view, the millennials and Generation Z are the most prominent consumers right now in India, and those consumer segment is getting influenced because of the smartphones, influencers, and the massive transformation we are looking forward in this particular segment of the consumers in India. Now, what are the main trends we observed here in this particular domain of the marketing is hyper personalization. Now, this hyper personalization is influence and it is created because of the digital proximity and the influence in the consumer segment and the marketing segment. Now, the second one is the second main trend is that rise of consciousness and the purpose driven marketing. When we are talking about the rise of consciousness and purpose driven marketing, that is makes maximum is getting influence and targeted the millennial consumers, the Generation Z consumers, the Bloomberg's consumers. Not only that, the third trend is observed here in India is rise of figatal. Now, when we are talking about the figatal is the combination of the word is created because of the two channel partners of the marketing. That is, one is offline and the online. Some people will say that it is a omni-channel kind of a rise of changes in the trend, but I'll say it is a physical world and the digital world getting clubbed, and they are creating the new terminology that is called a figatal. We'll go through that particular terminology later in this particular video in this particular segment itself. The next trend what we observed is the influencer driven marketing. Now, when we are talking about the influencer driven marketing, many people will come up in their mind about Instagrams, memes, YouTube, so many blog writers. Because of them, the influence is getting created and the marketing getting driven by the product and brand in that particular segment. Again, we'll check the influence of this particular trend in the next content of the video. And the next one, the trend right now in India, what we observed is behavioral and digital psychology. Now, when we talk about the behavioral and physical psychology, what exactly it means? It means the marketers are trying to interact with their consumers through the micro level. Again, what kind of micro level and what kind of behavioral shift is happening in this particular trend, that also we'll get it into the detail. Again, coming back to the first trend, what I highlighted is hyper personalization. Now, this hyper personalization is getting implemented by the marketers currently in India, by the top brands in India, by focusing the regional and cultural diversification in India. Now, who are the brands who are engaged in this kind of hyper personalization of trend setters right now in India is kind of a Flipkart, JioCinema, Zomato, Swiggy, Tata Click luxury brands for the fashion industry. When we are talking about this kind of a brand, from the marketing perspective, the marketers has implemented the very famous model of the consumer behavior as Engel Collat Blackwell model. When we are talking about this particular model, this model is basically used for consumer decision making power, where we influence the future orders. So, for example, if I am ordering something today in Zomato or Swiggy, they keep my record, and then in the future trend, what particular preferences of the food I prefer, they keep on giving me the alerts. So, when we are talking about here, the hyper personalization kind of a concept based on my taste buds and my preferences is utilized over here. Again, when we are talking about this hyper personalization, today's marketers are more proximately influencing Howard Set model. That is, for example, when we purchase something from the Mantra, and then my records of the preferences is stored over there, and if my choice of the product is available, and if they want to make me influence and create the stimuli as a buyer, then they'll push the message that only 2 left in our stock. This kind of notification is getting on our app. So when we are talking about such type of marketing tactics which getting driven by the trend setters, it actually influences the consumer behavior. When we are talking about the second trend which right now happening in India is rise of consciousness and the purpose driven consumer. Again, the millennials and the generation Z is kind of the people who are more focused on the purpose driven product purchasing behavior pattern. For example, the sustainability, the health consciousness, this proximity of the behavior or this prominent behavior getting reflected in the Indian consumer after post-COVID scenario, where the people are more conscious about their brand, what they are purchasing, what is the purpose of that brand, what are the visions of that brand, what are the value that particular brand and product hold. I'll give you the example of this particular trend is kind of a Mama Earth brand in cosmetic industry in India, who are doing very good business, Fab India. Then there is a new trend right now in the market, like that is a plant-based meat. The brand name is Good Dot. Again, this particular trend is again I observed as an influence by Nicosia model of the marketing. When we are talking about the Nicosia model of the marketing, what exactly the purpose of this model is that marketer is getting driven and implement their agenda is attitude formation. Now how this attitude formation can be successfully implemented with this kind of trendsetter is very prominently is reflecting one of the brand, that is Tata's one product, Tata Tea, where they run Pan India Jagore campaign. So where the attitude formation is developed, because just not as a tea consumer is only the focus, or the tea sale is not the only focus here in this particular campaign. The successful implementation of Nicosia model is you can observe in this particular campaign in the form of attitude formation towards the Indian citizen, towards the brand and our Indian made consumer product. Again, in the third trend set, that is a rise of Figatil. When I am talking about rise of Figatil, as I have already mentioned, it is a physical world and the digital world come together and form the new concept of trend, that is a Figatil, where we observe that 80% of Indian consumers nowadays are doing prior research purchasing any kind of product, whether it is a Nykaa, whether it is a Decoding India or Reliance Trends. These brands proved this particular data that their consumers are land up into their brand and product after doing the 80% research before doing the purchase. Again, in this particular segment, I observed that this particular trend is definitely is the successful implementation of the black box model of the consumer behavior. The next trend, what I discussed already, is influence driven. Now when we are talking about the influence driven and the regional social commerce is getting influenced with this, the main players in this particular trend setters are key players. Role is played by the Instagrams, it's by the memes, and who are such type of brand who are taking the benefit of this particular players are the Sugar Cosmetics, Soul Stores, Mantra, M-Line, Misho. These are the brands who are actually small town contribution in economic growth up to 50% in Indian economy. Now the next trend setters, what I mentioned already, is the behavioral and digital psychology. When we are talking about this, the SOR model, that is a stimulus, organism and response model, is successfully implemented in this particular domain of the trend by the trend setters, where the micro interactions can be communicated to the consumers by the marketer. The best example over here is Swiggy pop-ups, Mantra pop-ups, Paytm pop-ups, Ola and Uber pop-ups, where non-peak and peak time as per your destination and behavior and everyday routine pattern, the pop-ups and the offers is reflecting on your profile page. So here the big behavioral shift is observed because of this particular micro interaction among the consumer, and it is successfully implemented. So when we are talking about pan-India trend impact and pan-India trend sets key outs, where the tier 2 and tier 3 city who are actually contributing more than 500 million consumers purchasing power right now in India, where we call it as a India's Bharat segment. So when we are talking about India's Bharat segment, the majority marketers, brand holders are focusing on Maslow's need hierarchy pattern of the pyramid. Among that, they are focusing on the tier esteem tire and the safety needs. Now when we are talking about esteem tires and safety needs, only two brands currently right now prominently is reflecting in my mind. The first one is Campus Shoes and the second one is Bajaj Alliance, who are the rural brand, who are the tier 2, tier 3 city brand. Maximum consumer contributions are coming in their particular purchase and the product sale from this particular segment in India. I hope I covered maximum trend right now in this particular video segment. I hope you'll appreciate and like this particular video, and I request all of you to like and share this video maximum so that we can reach as an institute to maximum level. Thank you so much, guys.